So welcome to this case study from Crete in Greece of integrated natural and cultural heritage-based approach for biosphere reserves. My name is Penelope Ghini, and today I will present to you a project we had in Sfakia area, which is in the southwest of Crete. So, when was the last time you received a genuine letter, complete with a stamp, hand-delivered by a postman? How long did you have to wait for it? The advent of communication technologies has drastically altered our perception of time and space, impacting our relationship and the way we connect with each other. In a remote region called Sfakia in the southwest of Crete, the largest island in Greece, lies a 95% mountainous area with over 30 gorges and 50 peaks exceeding 2,000 meters. We are in the National Park of Samaria, which is a World Heritage site and a biosphere reserve. Nestled amidst at the pine forest and sea are 9 small villages connected by a person who would walk a grueling 45 kilometers 3 times a week. This individual's mission was to reach all the inhabitants and deliver letters from loved ones, soldiers, students, emigrants, pension money, medicine, or administrative papers. Known as the postman of the itinerary number 230, he had to climb 800 meters, cross 3 gorges, and descend to the beach at the entrance of the Samaria Gorge, where the old, now abandoned village of Ayaroumeli lies. Finally, he would return from the coastal path to the post office, where he had started his day at 4 a.m. This circular route connects a variety of landscapes, ecosystems, mountain and sea stories through time, making it a unique itinerary, not only for the environment, but also for its cultural diversity. This story marks the beginning of our adventure. So here you have the coastal path. The postman started from Sfakia, climb up to Aradena, to Ayanis, descend to Ayaroumeli, which is the coastal village of the National Park of Samaria Gorge, and coming back through the coastal road from Livaniana to Lutro and then Sfakia. Crete, as I showed you, it's this small island. About the project. So the project was carried out for 2 years between 2018 and 2020. And it was supported by the Sfakia district, the Environmental Educational Center of Vamos, the management body of the National Park of Samaria, the Forestry Agency of Chania, and it was with the assistance of the Mediterranean Center of Environment, the Heritage Management Organization, and the National Park of Samaria Agency that we were able to bring this idea to fruition. So inspired from the story above, I told you, we had a team. The team of the project was made for 3 people. Erasmia Castanidi, who's a geography PhD, Aris Anagmostopoulos, an anthropologist, archaeologist postdoc, and myself with a Master of Science in Applications of Psychology in Education, alternative, experiential, embodied, multimodal perspectives. Unfortunately, the project was limited due to the COVID-19 pandemic quarantine, so we couldn't do all the activities that we had planned in situ, like showing an interpretive walk. We had to do some presentations via internet and Zoom platforms with a lot of participation from Cretan immigrants in the US or in other Greek cities. So, the goal of the project was to valorize the cultural and natural environment, the influence of the natural environment on communication and social relations, the collective history through the family mail, to sensitize of the cultural and natural heritage in order to protect it. All these things through the ancient road of the rural postman that stopped walking on it in 1984. embraced with enthusiasm beyond our expectations. And the outcomes of this project we had to present at the end was an application with a map showing where you were walking, and with pop-up stories, an educational program of 50 pages of activities, a touristic flyer with elements of interpretation, an ethnographical research with 20 interviews, a short documentary movie that you can find all of these things in the Postman site that I'll show you, a site with all the information in 3 languages, Greek, English, and French, 4 presentations of the project, and we did some activities in situ with locals like participatory mapping, storytelling in the primary school, interpretive game with the local high school. So I believe that the most important thing in these cases and these projects is to have fun. We need good associations, good relations, fun activities. We need to create nice feelings when doing these things, and so we can really enjoy connecting nature and culture. So of course, some of the negative aspects of this isolation in the mountains, they were not hidden but approached in a funny way. So we had interviews with shepherds, activities in the primary school, some walks. The application I showed to you is available on Google Play Store, like a postman's road. So there are some stories. You can follow the path. You have pop-up stories whenever you reach a monument or a cultural site during your path. The site that you can find everything is the postman sfakia EU, if you need to copy. And the key concepts of the project was the cultural landscape concept, experiential learning, biodiversity, and heritage interpretation. Now, many lived experiences began to emerge through this project and through the voices of elderly and younger people who inherited the memories of their parents or grandparents. In every story, there was a description of the natural environment related to rural, religious, and social activities. Therefore, we preferred to use the concept of cultural landscape to approach nature. We agree with the approach of Rossler, who stated that cultural landscapes are at the interface between nature and culture, tangible and intangible heritage, biological and cultural diversity, and represent a closely woven net of relationship, the essence of cultures and people's identity. So there are experiential learning, we will talk about it later. Biodiversity, we saw it as a cultural diversity too. So because there is a 45 kilometers path and almost 800 meters altitude difference, the stories were different above the mountains and near the coast. So we used also heritage interpretation as a methodology that we might show it next. So about cultural landscapes, we said some things. Landscapes can evoke or create feelings, memories, stories. Contemplating and living in them is important in order to connect with nature. We used the so-called landscape wheel proposed by Carrie Sanswick. So the wheel of landscape components is driven by time according to the relationship that is established between people and places. You can find the people, the cultural, social, the respectual and aesthetic and natural different concepts. So we have an interconnection between place and people. When set in motion, the wheel takes on a unitary and distinctive appearance, just as white is manifested by quickly rotating the wheel of colors. About experiential learning and the activities we programmed, they were based on sensory development. It was also based on the eco-bodily experiential perspective of learning. This is a Gibson theory, an American psychologist who worked a lot on perception. It was based on playing, and we think that it promotes the elaboration of our experiences in order to approach people holistically, not only via a cognitive way. So experiential, heuristic, that means creative, we needed to improvise many times, and narrative dialogic psychopedagogy were used, like storytelling and dialogues. We tried to open conversations in the villages around the relation of nature and man. So we don't get only specific knowledge, but we learn about ourselves and how we relate to each other and the environment. Experiential learning doesn't have a specific predicted objective of learning, so it's quite free, so people can feel what they want to learn from that. And the two educational programs we did were focused like the green and the purple. The green is more focused on nature activities, the purple on cultural, and they all had the same structure, like preparation in the classroom, then walk in the field, and a third phase like evaluation or elaboration of the experience. So just to tell you the titles, you can find the educational program on the site. So the green program has a title like The Postman is Lost, learning about space and landscape through maps. So there's an introduction, there are some map activities, we introduce kids to observation and landscapes, then we are preparing for the excursion. It's not easy to walk on this landscape. We have the excursion and some activities on the field. And then coming back, we use art, some drama techniques, and literature techniques to talk about what we lived and what we learned. So that's just for an example. Now, the key concept of biodiversity, it's quite important because we were inside the national park and actually touching the limits of the national park. So the path has 50 kilometers. It crosses 3 gorges, passing through 9 villages, and there's a full diversity of ecosystems and stories. And of course, diversity of uses, which is the relation between the cultural and the natural. So in the sea stories, you could have some fishing stories and maritime stories. So we talked a lot about the sea. And on the mountains, we had more stories about shepherds, agriculture, pasture, and apiculture. You can see some pictures of there, some results of extensive apiculture. You can see it on the tree on the right, a pine tree who's sick. That's the main problem in the area, but it's now getting solved slowly. About heritage interpretation, we used correspondence, so letters and cards, as a cultural product, as a cultural material. So we thought that letters can preserve local language and style, personal interpretations of historical facts, of emotions evoked by nature or social events, descriptions and narrations. So we used photos, cards, stamps are also a huge cultural story, and family codes refers to the codes that the families of immigrants had between them to communicate some news without having to open the letter, because if you open the letter some decades before, you had to pay for the stamp. So in order to for example, explain that we had a newborn child, which was a girl, they invented codes that you could find on the envelope and not inside the cards. So we had many interviews, so we had lots of stories recorded, and we had to make an interpretive walk for tourist stakeholders because our audience, we wanted to be not only locals, but also visitors. We were very happy to see that the project was really embraced by locals. They wanted to repeat similar actions, and it helped them reconnect in a different way with their region. As I said, during the COVID, the pandemic, we couldn't do many presentations in the villages, but through internet, we had a lot of people attending the presentations from Australia, from the US, people who had listened about the postman. Very emotional stories. I remember one story of a woman who said that her father was responsible of vaccinating people in the villages, and the postman showed him the path. So after all of these presentations, there were many ideas of how it could really get alive again, this path. I have to tell you that the path exists. It's a touristic attraction, and not the postman path, so not the meaning of it. They just know it under another number, like the E4 path, which is the European long-distance path. But the program was also made for visitors. So if somebody wanted to do the Postman Trail, they could get in touch with me as a mountain guide, and there is a whole week prepared for visitors in order to make them not only walk, but also interact with locals. We were very happy to see that one of the outcomes that I could not think is the change of attitude of seeing their place again with other eyes. And the good thing was that also visitors from the 60s or the 70s could also bring their experiences and their memories, because they could also talk about how they lived this landscape. So you understand that yes, it was, I could meet people from the US telling me that I was here in the 60s and we had that and we had the other thing and we met this person. So yes, many good examples of how they connected with the nature and the landscape there. Of course, the problem is that we don't have any funding opportunities. We're trying to develop the project, but we still miss not the interest of local people. They're really very active. They want to do things, but in the labyrinth of bureaucracy, it's somehow lost. So thank you for your attention. I wanted you to see the meaning of place and space as a space for learning experience. So there is this definition that place is of particular interest on psychosocial perspective, as the subject forms emotional bonds with the space that surrounds it. The bonds affect communication and interaction processes in which the subject participates, and they make his everyday life meaningful. The process of the use of the place by the subject personifies the place. It gives it an identity, the place identity, and finally contributes to the development of the identity of the subject. And all this is very academic, but I wanted to show you Mr. Yeronimakis, who was one of the interviewed, who said the same thing in his own words without even have studied anything, that it's landscape that shapes people and culture. Thank you very much for your attention. If you have any questions, I would be glad to answer them. Thank you.